Most people have never heard the word unschooling. And the ones that have and don't really know what it is, they probably think it just means child neglect. But the thing is they're just wrong. When I first started homeschooling, I had been doing all of the normal standard way of doing things, the curriculum, the state standards, the state testing, all of that stuff. But there was conflict in my home. And it wasn't until we switched to an unschooling type of model that my kids were unleashed and they became the leaders that they are today. My name's Daniel Moss, and I've been homeschooling my kids for 20 years. I had no teaching background, no credentials. I grew up a terrible student, and I was told I was dumb my whole life, and I believed it. But along the way in our homeschooling journey, I started to pick up some books. I started to do the work of my life, and I became the father that my kids needed me to become. And before we get into this too much, if you're a homeschooling dad, or you're thinking about being a homeschooling dad, I built a school community for homeschooling dads. It's free, and when you join, you're going to be given access to a free 5-day challenge on inspiring your children. It's the why and the how of accomplishing that. So go check it out. The link's in the description below. So now let's talk about unschooling. What is unschooling? At its core, unschooling is about learning from life, developing yourself outside of the classroom, and getting as many direct experiences as possible. What it's not is neglect, chaos, and just let my kid do whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want, and don't offer them any structure. At the root of unschooling is this idea that human beings, especially young ones, have a natural, innate desire to learn. And that desire gets crushed when you put them inside of a box and you hand them a textbook and you force them to sit for 6 hours a day. Unfortunately, a lot of times in the homeschool world, the traditional school model gets brought into the home and we replicate it. But because the traditional school model wasn't designed to produce self-directed learners, but instead was designed to create compliant workers, a lot of times that's where the conflict will come from in the home, is that the primary caregiver, the parent, is forcing that kind of rigid structure onto the child, and the child, being that they're a child and they do have a nature to them, butts up against it, and now you have this conflict that brews. But see, the gift of homeschooling is that you get to build something completely different from the traditional school system. Something that fits your child. Something that treats them like a human being with a future, not a book report with a deadline. I think it's safe to say that there's too much focus on outdated subjects in traditional schooling and not nearly enough on the things that actually matter and move the needle on a person's life. Things like self-regulation and grit, goal setting, learning how to learn, believe it or not, building a real vision for the future. And in the traditional school system, there's almost no emphasis on real-world experiences. Things like mentorship, apprenticeships, and hands-on work that actually means something. And so homeschooling allows you to be able to break free from that model and give your kids something completely different if you're brave enough to do so. And here's the science behind why this advantage matters. There's a concept in psychology called the locus of control. An internal locus of control means that you believe you are in control of your life, that your choices matter, that your effort shapes your outcome, and that you are the author of your life. An external locus of control means that you believe life happens to you. Other people decide. The system decides. You just react. There's a book called Tribal Leadership where there's 5 different categories of people, and I'm not going to go into every single category, but on one far end, the category 1 type people, they're the kind of people that believe life sucks. And usually you find people in prison are the people that kind of talk like that. Life sucks, life's unfair, the system's rigged, that kind of stuff. And everything happens to them. But then on the other far end is the level 5 people. And those are the kind of people that they believe they're a part of something bigger, and that their actions and the stuff that they do and what they contribute to that cause is something that's even bigger than themselves. And that's the difference between an external locus of control and an internal locus of control. And in the book, the author argues that we need to all aim at level 5. But there was research done from 1960 to 2002 that Ned Johnson and William Stixrud talk about in their book, The Self-Driven Child. This research shows that over the 42 years that study was done, children more and more were losing their internal locus of control. And as that was happening, their anxiety was going up exponentially. So the system that we built has a big downside to it. It robs that internal locus of control from people, and it creates anxiety. Think about it. Sit when we say sit. Learn what we tell you you must learn. Get graded on our terms and on our standards, and move forward when we decide you're ready to move forward. And that just scratches the surface of all the requirements that someone has met with when they are part of a government school system. And that's not really education, that's training for dependence. But unschooling does the opposite. It basically hands the child the wheel and says, what do you want to learn? What are you interested in? A parent who's really well attuned to their child will see what their kid is interested in. And they'll fan the flames of that interest, and they'll facilitate an environment where that kid can go deep onto those things. But it comes from an internal sense of ownership, a deep sense that the child believes that they're driving this, that what they feel, what they desire matters, that who they are matters, and that they have the ability to make an impact on their day-to-day life. And oftentimes when a kid gets really passionate about something, what you find is that they go really deep. And that depth and that flow state that can be achieved from that, and that natural interest in the subject, is the kind of an education that you can't really give a child when you're using the carrot and the stick. All kinds of research point to that. That intrinsic motivation for that subject matter is going to bear way better fruit than a child who's forced to have to learn something and they study for the test. Now, you remember at the beginning when I said that unschooling is about the child gaining as many direct real life experiences as possible? I want to come back to that for a second. I read this wonderful book not that long ago called Personality Isn't Permanent by Benjamin Hardy. It's one of the most impactful books I've ever read in my entire life, and I've read hundreds and hundreds of books. But he makes a point in the book that your identity is affected by your goals, but your goals are affected by your real life experiences. Because how can you set a goal for something that you don't even know exists, that you don't even know there's a possibility attached to that thing? Because you don't know that thing even exists. Like, you can't pursue a future that you don't even know is possible. And he tells a story about a chef named Charlie Trotter, who used to bring inner city children into his elite restaurant, a place that would cost hundreds of dollars for a meal, and he would feed them for free. And he would give them the experience of that restaurant and how it worked and functioned in a real, tangible way. And a lot of people criticized him and said that he was giving them unrealistic expectations, that these inner city kids could never actually have that kind of future, and he's setting them up for disappointment. But Trotter didn't care what they said, and he believed that he was giving them subconscious enhancing experiences and expanding what they believed was possible for themselves. And if you read the book, you'll see that is indeed what was happening. And that's what a direct experience does for a child. So every museum, every apprenticeship, every conversation with someone doing something remarkable, and every time they're allowed to follow a curiosity into the deep end, it expands the map of what they believe is even available to them. I want you to tell me in the comments one experience that you've had in your life that changed what you thought was possible for yourself. Because I would bet money it wasn't a worksheet. I think a lot of times this gets lost in the unschooling world. All of these really neat things about unschooling, the internal locus of control, the self-directed learning, the intrinsic motivation, the life experiences. None of it happens simply because you just walk away from the school system. None of it happens just because you wash your hands free from parenting and doing anything school related with your kids. It happens because of the people around the child, namely the parent facilitating these things and making these things happen. They watch you and they learn from you. They're watching whether or not you read a book or you scroll on your phone. They watch whether or not you pursue something even when it gets harder, if you quit when it gets difficult, whether you're curious about the world or maybe you stopped growing. Depending on how those things get answered, your kids know. They see it, they watch it. And one of the best ways to inspire your kids is for you to be modeling these types of things for them too. Don't just make your whole life all about them, but make sure you're taking care of yourself and developing yourself into that thing that your kids can model their life after. In a government classroom, that teacher is not modeling their learning. They already learned and they're the expert and they know everything. And the kid sits there and goes, wow, the teacher knows everything. I wish I was that way. But with you as the parent, they get to watch you develop these things. They get to see the process. They get to watch you go along for that journey and struggle and all the things that the child is going to experience when they go on their journey. They're going to watch you do it as you lead the way. And that is pure gold. So what does unschooling actually produce? I know the families that I've seen that have done it have produced amazing children. In my own life, my oldest is 25 and she owns her own marketing agency. And she's worked with some of the biggest real estate agents in their respective areas and grown their businesses. My 22 and 21-year-olds, they are innovating live theater, bringing new technology into the arena. And my 14-year-old is the captain of his robotics team. And none of them needed permission to do any of that stuff. They just took initiative and they made it happen. And if you're thinking it's because I'm some amazing, wonderful teacher dad who it was so easy for me to produce kids that were like that, understand that it's not the case at all. It literally couldn't be further from the truth. And that's why I created that school group. There's a link in the description. It's for dads. It's free. And when you join, you're going to be presented with an opportunity to partake in our free 5-day challenge that teaches the how and the why of inspiring your children into their own greatness. So in a nutshell, that's unschooling from somebody who didn't ever hear of it and then changed everything in favor of it. And it's not about the absence of curriculum per se. It's more about the trust in your child's curiosity and their ability to pursue things and look at things and try things, and then how you can facilitate that stuff and how you can model it in your own life and create a culture and an environment of that. So subscribe, comment, check out my school group. You're the best. Have a wonderful day. Take care.